sitting down in this bus and just like talking about life and how like our spending, our expenses, right? And how people like how they treat money and how money comes into their life and how they push it away as well. So mainly that's what we were talking about. We wanted to share a little bit about this with you guys, and mostly if you're starting out as an entrepreneur or starting out in business or anything else, there's certain things I think that are important to know when it comes to money and being able to travel and give yourself that lifestyle, but as well knowing where to go, what places to be at, to be able to afford it, not to the point where you're just like spending it like crazy. So, what should we tell them?
I mean, I remember one mistake that I personally made was when I started working online, I thought I would just be able to travel and afford it. And I was thinking that the money would just continue to come and I would continue to make more, and it would just increase linearly, basically meaning that every single month that I continue to work online, that it's just going to continue to increase my income. But what I didn't realize is that it doesn't really work that way. It's actually really inconsistent. And you have to really be prepared for times when things are slow. And the way to do that is to be able to be disciplined with the amount of money that you have in the bank overall. So Laura was talking about this. It's like, for example, let's say you have $5,000 set aside and that's like your number. Then sometimes what we tend to do is we say to ourselves, well, I can afford to spend a little bit extra, like I can treat myself, I can afford this extra dinner, like this going out night, or this extra nice hotel room, or whatever it is. And so you allow yourself to go down to like $4,500, and then you tell yourself, well, I could probably spend an extra $700 on this extra thing, and on this trip to an island, for example. So now you're down to $3,800, and you just keep telling yourself that. This is what happened to me, is I would save a certain amount of money, and I would tell myself it's okay if you just spend a little bit extra on buying a course. Like that's typically what I spend money on, is like buying courses, or like investing in paid advertising, like investing in Facebook ads, because the rationale in my mind was, well, if I take this money and I put it into ads, or I put it into this course, I'm going to multiply my money. But it actually doesn't often work out that way necessarily. There's going to be times where you put money into paid ads and nothing really comes out, or you get a negative return on your ad spend. So the better thing to do is actually to almost pretend like that money isn't really going to be multiplied. You can't just assume that it's just going to be multiplied. You want to be willing to lose that money. That being said, you're going to try to make a return on your investment, but you have to be open to the possibility that you might lose all that money. So you can't just put all your eggs into that basket. I've done this in the past where I set aside a certain amount of money in savings, and I took all that money, put it all into Facebook ads because I really thought the campaign was going to work, and I only made about half of it back. And I actually ended up spending the rest of that money in more ads, and just totally lost all the money in the course of maybe 6 months. So that's something that we were talking about, is especially if you're traveling and working online, or you're getting into entrepreneurship, then something to consider is to have those limitations and be willing to sometimes be a bit frugal when things are tight and inconsistent.
Exactly. And I mean, being frugal doesn't mean that you have to like eat a cracker a day or like really go to that extreme. But I mean, just like noticing that, okay, I have a specific amount, I'm going to be disciplined with it and I'm not going to touch it. And if I need to buy myself like a pair of shoes or anything like that, I'm a girl, I like to buy clothes and like I like to treat myself. But as well, I also understand, okay, the money that I'm saving, I'm going to pretend like I don't have it. And if I really need these pair of shoes, or I really need this, I need to make money to get it.
Yeah.
So I like to keep that mindset, like the money that I'm saving is there, but also like being able to discipline yourself. And I was was telling Marcus how before I used to like just do the saving, like I would let money be taken out of my bank account or like from my paycheck or whatever to go into the safe thing where people would keep it so I wouldn't touch it. But it was kind of like doing it for me. I wasn't being disciplined. Or someone was just keeping my money, and at the end they would give it back, so I would have like all this money, and what was the first thing I would do? I would spend it because I was not used to having that amount in my hands. So you just spend it, and I think that's what happens. You need to be able to have the amount in your hands and be able to tell yourself you're not going to go past that number and you're not going to spend it, because then you start trusting yourself with your own money. You know, it's kind of like if you're saving it with someone else or anything, you're giving the money away to someone to take care of it for you. That's not the idea. The idea is that you need to learn how to trust yourself with your own money. Because if you can't do it with just like, I don't know, $100, being disciplined with $100, how are you going to do it with $1 million? So it's going step by step and just being able to focus and thinking, because I'm one of those who falls into spending emotionally. Like if there's a strong emotion towards something that I need, I will go ahead and spend it. And it happens to everyone, really. Like that's why we end up buying things, because it's going to solve an emotional problem for us. But you have to kind of like just think, okay, I'm going to try to disconnect myself with that. Doesn't mean that I'm never going to be able to buy what I want to buy for myself. I will be able to get there, but it's probably not going to be now, and probably whatever I want to buy right now, I don't really need it.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that, you know, people make decisions based on emotion and justify it with logic. So it's just how human nature works. And also another point on what you're saying is what are you saying? So you're mentioning about, so during the good times as well. So let's say you do make a lot of money one month. That is something that, you know, I've seen where you make a lot of money one month and then you're like, oh, I can spend a lot more. But then what you realize is you look at your bank account at the end of the month, or maybe a couple months or 3 months later, you're back at where you were when you first started. So just because you make more doesn't necessarily mean that you can just put all that into overspending or spending more. For me, for example, when I made more money one month, I decided to buy an extra conference and take a trip to London. And that was something that I probably could have just set that money aside or invested it and let it grow instead of doing that. And even just for us, for example, like right now, since we're building a store, we're in the process of cutting down expenses, because especially when you're building something, it's not always the best thing to put all your eggs into that basket. That's what a lot of people tend to do, is just like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna put all of my time, energy, and resources and take a huge risk and put everything on the line to try to make this work. And that often leads to a lot of disappointment. I've just seen this time and time again, where, you know, I've spoken to a lot of people trying to start like digital marketing agencies, for example, and I've just seen it where they say, I'm going to make this happen in 30 days, or I'm going to make this happen in 90 days, and they quit their job and they just have their savings set aside and they have no backup plan, which it can work sometimes, but a lot of times it leads to a lot of disappointment and heartbreak, and they have to go back to their old job. environment really shapes your emotions, which shapes your thinking, and that can sometimes lead to actions that you regret. So it was important for us to take that step to get out of that situation. Not that it's like a bad house or anything. It's just that it has like a lot of emotion tied to it. And so we went to the Airbnb, and now we're on the bus to San Miguel de Allende, which kind of a spontaneous decision because I saw this article from Business Insider on my phone that this is voted the most beautiful or like the best small city in Mexico, or small town in Mexico. So I mentioned that to